Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Powerhouse Podcast. I am super thrilled as I have yet another powerhouse joining me in the ring today. And we are going to go a few rounds, as always, having the deep, courageous, connected conversation and really talk about redefining leadership in today's environment. As you know, leadership is a choice. It is all about how you choose to show up, how you choose to serve others, and how you choose to take personal responsibility inside that space. So without further ado, let me introduce you to my fabulous guest, Dr. Diane Ansari-Winn. First of all, let me just say welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
I am super excited. I have had the honor of finally getting to know her better recently, and so we're gonna have some fun.
Yeah, I love your introduction about getting in the ring, and because I actually studied boxing. I do a little boxing.
Oh, we're gonna have some serious
yeah.
As all of you know, boxing is near and dear to my heart. It is.
Yeah. Oh, wait.
And train, and so we may have a whole different kind of conversation today. Woo! I actually have somebody that really wants to be in the ring. We might get a couple figurative left hooks, little southpaw action, a couple uppercuts. It doesn't matter, but I love it. I love it.
We're gonna have
boxing energy in the ring. This is awesome.
Cool.
Awesome. So let me tell you a little bit about my component there. So anyway, Dr. Winn is an MD and MPH, is an anesthesiologist. That is such a word I struggle with getting out of my mouth. And a physician development coach, speaker and workshop leader who received her Bachelor of Science, Medical Doctor, and Master's of Public Health from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, which is a beautiful space. I don't like the winters, but a beautiful campus.
Yeah,
she is also the creator and the host of the Doctor's Life podcast and founder of Physician Vitality Institute, which has the mission of transforming and improving healthcare for all by promoting and supporting physician health and well-being. And I mean, she is, like I said, she's absolutely brilliant, and I'm super excited because we can talk about health in a lot of different perspectives. So Diane, tell us a little bit about kind of your journey to this point and where your focus is in terms of helping people really, this whole Vitality Institute. What does that mean to be in a space of vitality? I think that's such a big word, and we probably should take a moment to actually define that.
Yeah, well, we'll start there, and then I'll talk about my journey to getting there. Actually, I founded the Physician Vitality Institute last year. Basically, when I had gone through my own experience with burnout, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But what I had found is when I really wanted to serve my community of physicians and thinking about how can we really improve healthcare, and it gets back to your point about being leaders. And the best leaders are not dragging their butt to work and complaining and dreading being at work, then going home and, staying up until midnight doing charts and then the cycle. The best leaders are people who are dynamic. They are energetic. They have the capacity to come up with and take on new projects. And they have room, they make room for the loves of their lives, the loves in their lives. And they take the care of themselves too. Yeah. And so if you look at business leaders, they tend to do that more. Like if you look at the greatest leaders, they meditate in the morning, they have their time in the morning, and they take care of themselves as best they can, understanding that the pendulum, sometimes goes one way, this because you travel and, maybe your self-care isn't as great, but when you can, you do. And the thing about doctors is that the culture is that we do things that are hard, we do things that are difficult, and we struggle, and we take care of others, and taking care of ourselves is not a priority. So in order for physicians to do the great work that they do, taking care of patients, doing research, public health, being advocates for patients, doing all the work that they do, they really need to have that sense of vitality, of energy, of purpose. And we all had that when we went into med school. And then over time, you kind of tend to lose that. At least half of doctors do, because half of doctors are, if you look at the studies, half of doctors are burned out.
Yeah.
So the whole thing about like vitality is like the opposite, right? You're happy, you're healthy, you're in love, you're doing all the great stuff that you love to do. Your work is fulfilling. So that's why I founded the Physician Vitality Institute. And that came from my own experience with burnout as an anesthesiologist, where, 15 years in, I kind of looked around and was like, is this all there is? I'm 45 years old. I've been practicing for 15 years. What am I going to do with the next 15 years? And I didn't have the tools to know what to do. I tried to get the tools, I just couldn't find them. And so I ended up leaving clinical practice 6 years ago, and it was really hard. But over that time since then, I've learned what to do. And, now I have like this big smile on my face, and I'm like, relax. I get to talk to great people.
And she has a smile all the time. Every time you see her, she has this huge
and that's because like inside, like I feel fantastic. And I want the doctors that I help to know that they can feel that without leaving medicine necessarily, but you could, wherever you are, you can get that.
Well, and that's what I think is so important, right? Because your niche is really physicians and doctors. That's your journey. That's what you understand. That's the space. And, if you look at the numbers just across the board, we have a culture that is more than 80% of our culture is in some level of burnout. And a lot of times I like to say there's 3 levels. And from someone who hit rock bottom in my own burnout in corporate America, there's burnout, which almost everyone has had some sense of at some point. Mm-hmm. Then there's kind of the fumes past burnout. And then there's this black abyss that's almost as if you don't know. I mean, there's no way up. You are so lost in this vacuum that becomes a black hole of this just very debilitating, anchoring energy that draws you down and sucks everything around you into it. It's that vortex, right? And so I think what's interesting about that is, I found that the more demanding, the more servant the role is, which is so interesting. As we put ourselves in a space to serve, we often forget that piece of self-care. And, there's this distinction, right? And I would love to hear your thoughts and some of the things that you work with doctors. But as we're talking about this applies across the board. This idea, these thoughts, vitality. It's that I ask people a lot of times on a scale of 1 to 10, how vibrant, alive, engaged, and energized you feel in your life. That's truly your vitality, right? And
I love it.
So when you think about that, and it's interesting because a lot of people say, oh, I'm a 6. If they're being honest, they might say a 4. My next question is then think about what you can put out. If you're at a 6, the best you can put out is a 5, maybe 5.5 before we have to pull you up and scrape you off the ground because you're flattened, you got nothing else.
Yep.
And I'm curious because, there's a bit in my mind, and one of the things I teach is a big distinction between being selfish and being self-full. And selfish is this space that says we're doing it in spite of others with no regard to others. It's all about that entitlement, me space.
Right.
Where being self-full says I'm doing this to serve others.
Yes.
And so when you think about that space of self-full, and I don't even know if that terminology is the way you approach it. What does that mean to really be full, to be in a place of full vitality, to be able to serve our best gifts and have that space of love and smile and whatever? How does somebody start to make that turn if they're feeling any of those levels of burnout?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I love what you're saying about being self-full, because it's kind of what I was talking about capacity. And we're on Zoom, so you can't see our hands, but as we're talking about, we're like reaching out, because when you're selfish, you're like this, sort of in your own thing, in your own groove. What's in it for me? It's the direction is in. The beautiful thing about being self-full is that you're developing the capacity, the ability, because you have that strength, right? Like you're saying, oh, if you're a 4, then you can only go to a 5 or a 6. Well, if you have that ability, if you're vital, then you have the capacity to go to a 10. Now, I work a lot with energy. It's interesting, we're on the same wavelength. So we're talking through the boxing, and so we got to talk.
Which is a lot of energy in boxing. There's actually a reason for people. We will get there.
We'll talk about boxing for sure before we're done. I work a lot in terms of energy, and I mean in terms of energy management as opposed to time management. So the idea is that we do things that deplete us and we do things that energize us. And that's just part of our ebb and flow as human beings. We work real hard and then we have to sleep. We get hungry and we have to eat, we expend energy and we have to rejuvenate. And so that's the first thing that I teach, is that you can't go go the whole time and expect that you're going to be able to maintain that over the long haul, because you just can't. It's just not humanly possible. And doctors, like a lot of people, that are very highly intelligent and very successful, they use a lot of their brains and they think that they can just keep going using their brain. And it's, our bodies and our brains and we're just, and our hearts even, we're like batteries. We do use up that energy and we need to replenish it. So that's one of the main things that I first have to get docs to understand is you do have limits. You do superhuman things, you do amazing things. And if you're a mom, if you're, in any role, we all have points at which in our day we do things that are amazing. But that doesn't mean that even though you're doing things that are superhuman, that you're not a superhuman. You're just a human. So, go do your amazing stuff and then take care of yourself so you can do more amazing stuff tomorrow, So that's one of the things I talk about is just that concept. And yes, you should take care of yourself. Not, like you said, not because you're being selfish, but because you want to give. And, it's just facts. Right. So then I talk about energy renewal in 5 dimensions. So in relationships, calm concentration. So ways to create calm and relaxed concentration so you're not in monkey mind and busy all the time.
I'm best friends with monkey mind sometimes.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
We have full-blown conversation.
Yeah, mine's pulling on my shirt. So yeah, then inspiration. So things that nourish your spirit. Caring for your body and emotional fitness. So 5 components. And all of them are important. Sometimes, it's you can actually regenerate that energy in multiple categories by different things that you do, right? So say that you run with a friend outside, you're listening to music, then that's and you feel better, right? So that's emotional fitness, caring for your body, social relationships, and the physical part of it. So there's activities that you do that can renew you in many dimensions at once.
Which is a perfect segue into why we box, right? Because I tell people sometimes, especially as someone who, and as a self-proclaimed, has been challenged in the meditation and yoga space, it's hard sometimes for me to be quote still and to really channel that in. And what's interesting, and people will say, oh, you like boxing because it's such an aggressive sport. And I said, actually, that's the opposite reason why I like boxing. Because first of all, one of the first disciplines of boxing is you never fight unless you have to. It's not about it's not actually one of the first things you also learn. It's not the power of your punch. It's how you control your energy and your core. And so what I love about it is there's such mental focus. There's such a discipline to it. There is such a breathing. I mean, and most people don't even know that Joseph Pilates, who was a boxer that trained boxers, created Pilates to help boxers have a stronger core so that they could actually use energy to their advantage.
I did not know
Oh
that.
yeah, Joseph Pilates was a boxer.
I didn't know he was a
Who
boxer.
felt that most boxers did not have a core, that they were all about physical strength, so they would expend their energy too quickly and gas out, which is such a term in boxing, that you gas out, right? That's why you see people tap too early, because they've expended all their energy because they're not using it from their core. And what's interesting is when you allow yourself to settle into that kind of ease and grace of the motion and the fluidity and the focus, you then, and your breathing is all coming from your core, it actually takes less physical exertion to create that perfect connection. And for me, that's what I find, besides the fact that it feels freaking awesome to hit a bag.
I know.
And when you're sparring hitting someone else sometimes, I'm just gonna say.
I got it.
But
yeah.
there's so much around the technique and the mental focus and discipline. And so let's talk about that a little bit, because I think, people think it's just this brute grunt force, when I feel like for me, I can do as much work as I could yoga and other when I'm really focused and in the zone for boxing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's so many lessons. There's so many lessons we can take from boxing. And one of them, look at me. I'm like super feminine. You're super feminine. And like I would mince into the gym, and like I have like these pink wraps. I put those on. Right. I have pink gloves, and but I would go in there
cute boxing, just saying,
and wail. But but oh my gosh, I had such a journey with boxing. The first thing, and it applies to leadership too, is that you have to get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. And I know that's kind of the latest thing that people say, but it is so true, because especially for me being a woman, I was not taught to be like hitting anybody. And actually having somebody like come at me was like really disconcerting. So the first thing that you learn is like how to before you even throw a punch, at least the way that I've been taught, is that first you just learn how to move. You learn how to be in the space. You learn how to be in an athletic stance, which is, metaphor for being a leader, being a powerful leader. You learn how to just stand, and if somebody comes at you, how to bob and how to weave and how to move, so that we got
to get that. For those of you that actually get this, we're doing a little bobbing and weaving here, and
but you need to learn that first, and then you learn simple things, punches and stuff. But it's all like it's all from your core, and it's
all about technique.
Yes. And that the power of your punch actually comes from deep, like all your muscles have gone out, and then finally connect. Yeah. And I think that's the same for leadership too. Like if you cannot lead superficially and be a really effective, strong, powerful leader that people want to follow.
Yeah.
Like you can come and bark and give orders, and you can look tough, but when you're not really coming from a strong sense of self, you're not coming from this energy that we're talking about. You're tired, and you're like number 4. Who wants to follow you? Who wants? How can you lead, and how can you create something that's bigger than yourself? And that's what I know that's where you're coming from, Candy. Is like you're not looking like to just lead in small space. You're looking to be big. And that's another thing, with the boxing and the moving, like you learn how to shuffle, you learn how to move in space, but you also have a very strong sense of self and where you are, in the world. Yeah. And in your own space, where that's like where you start.
Right.
Then
you can cover a lot of space when you own your core. You move effortlessly, and you move, and you're very agile, which that's such a term in business now, right? Is that agile thinking, agile this, and it makes you very nimble. And when you come from that space that you're talking about, I love the metaphor around leaders, same thing, that core internal sense of being and knowing and being able to start from there so that you then can make something bigger, because you mentioned the word inspiration, right? And it's that space. And what's interesting to me is I've had workshops where, especially for women, but even men sometimes, where I'll take a sparring bag and say, I want you to just hit this. And most women go in and do that. To your point, if I hear another woman go, first of all, that is not a breath out. Is not a breath out. Chew is just a noise you're making. And what's interesting to me, because we do have this perception that says, I can't be forceful. I can't be, and the word aggressive used to get thrown at me all the time, and I would just smile very sweetly and say, thank you. I love that you say I'm aggressive, because I do know how to go after things. There is a difference between aggressive and assertive, and not all aggressive energy is bad. And so when they connect, it's interesting because you get the and then finally you say something like, you provoke them and say, I want you to hit it like your husband came home and dropped off his dirty shoes and whatever it is. And all of a sudden, for the first time they connect, they really connect and get a sense of their power. One of the, I think the most eye-opening experiences, why I love that you're using this as a metaphor, is when they go, you see their eyes get really big and you're like, now just imagine that's just your physical power. Now let's tap into exactly what you're talking about, right? That core. Because there's such a metaphor for when people hit that bag the right way, the right time, with the right, just perfect, sweet connection. There's a transformation that changes.
Yeah, there is. And I love when you say sweet, because it has that.
It's sweet. It's like the perfect shot off the golf tee, right? Where you hear that ting.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when you have that the perfect punch.
Yeah. And it's funny. It's very cool that you would use that exercise in your workshops, Candy, because the first thing that happened to me when I was like learning how to punch and I'm learning how to punch. And then the very first time my trainer put on all the equipment, and I mean, he knows how to box, so I'm not going to hurt him. There's just, I just can't. He's too fast. He's going to be able to move, so I can't hurt him. But my impression was that I could. And, I'd been trained all my life. I mean, I was the anesthesiologist. I, literally saved lives when I was doing my work. And so all of those fears about like hurting somebody and being too much and they all kicked in, and I literally put my hands down and I was like, I cannot hit you. I can't. And that was actually the end of that first session. I was like, I can't do it. And it took me to somewhere that I just really needed to like work through whatever that fear was, like if I exert my power, and like you're saying, my physical power, but it's, it's metaphor for you. If I really exert my power, I might hurt somebody.
Right. And
that was very profound. It was actually one of the most profound lessons I've learned in the last year or so, is that, and then I came back and, we kind of like built on it slowly. But that the lesson is that, you can use your power without hurting anyone. And, it is possible to use power to be harmful, but when your intention is good, your power actually serves, because we were actually then able to spar and do that back and forth. And just had like several rounds of just having fun. And it was actually fun, but you have to learn a technique, so there's one thing, there can be, like you're saying, aggressive versus assertive. So aggressive can be like, it can drive people away, and it can run counter to your purpose. Assertive is completely in alignment with your purpose, right? And you're actually advocating for your position, which is well-meaning. It's like that, whether it be like, I need my space at the parking lot or whatever, like that, there's nothing wrong with being assertive. And if we can teach, ourselves and our women colleagues that one thing, we would, as a group, we would be so much further along. And the beautiful thing is that, we are, as women, we're learning that, it's just being assertive is being part of being human. Nobody wants us to be small. Like, it doesn't serve.
It
does not serve to be small.
And what's so interesting about that too is one of the things people don't understand, and it's why people that, like, if they have kids they feel they need to give some discipline to, why martial arts and boxing are so good for young children, because there is such a mental component. There's also one of the first things you're taught in any type of mixed martial arts or boxing is that, first of all, fighting is never an answer. It's always a last resort. Right. And that the only time that you have to be aggressive in that is if you're protecting yourself. But what happens is, one, there's a mental focus that happens. There's also this sense of being taught responsibility, because to your point, yes, there are things we are taught that could significantly hurt someone, if not kill them, if we are not present to that knowledge and taking responsibility for how we choose to show up in that space.
Absolutely.
We teach responsibility in things like boxing, because when you recognize you have more power than you think, it's not that the power itself is bad. It's your choices around the power and how you assert it and how you exert it into the right spaces, right? So I think there's so much phenomenal teaching in that, because when you teach the discipline, you teach the technique, you teach the rules of engagement around it, it allows you to have that fun. The other thing is, one of the best techniques for bullying is to stand in your space and own a presence so that you can stand up to your bully. One of the best places to learn that is in boxing and others, because you get that core. Your chances of being put in a space to feel small, to have abuse, to be bullied are reduced because your own presence. Because when you come from your core, to your point earlier, you can't shrink in and do that selfish space we were talking about. You can't do that small space either. Using your core means your shoulders are back and you're open up, which is why, and you talked about the stance, even coming into how leaders show up. It's why they teach men and women, salespeople, one of the biggest things they teach them is the Superman pose or the Wonder Woman pose.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you're good. I was about to mention that, so I'm glad you did.
If you hold it for 5 minutes, there's something that happens, because in order to do that, your core has to engage, and it completely grounds you in what we're talking about, which is that, because when you're grounded in that stance, you're very agile, you're very nimble, you're very quick on your feet, and you can react without reacting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I'm glad that you mentioned that. We must be on this, I think we're starting to mind meld now, but because I was wondering, well, how can we convey
your
this?
Your monkey mind can meet my monkey mind. They can shake hands.
Oh, geez. Oh, man. So, how can we convey this to people who, they're like, oh, I don't know about boxing or take it, but like you're saying, that Superman pose where you stand strong, I've got wings on my
chest out, put the shoulders back,
chest out, the shoulders
forward.
And you hold it for, you said 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I've heard 3 to 5.
Yeah, 3 to 5. And it's a long time, but it's with purpose.
It feels like a long time, but man, by the end of it, you're like, damn, that was.
I say play your favorite Disney song, Muppet song, or whatever your go-to, seriously, Bruno Mars, Uptown Funk. Play that and stand in the pose, the whole song. That's about the length of what we're talking about.
I love it. And then the other one's the Wonder Woman pose.
Right. Ching, 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 ching.
or or Wakanda forever. Yeah. So either way. Where are we going?
I don't know. It's channeling that space, right? We're just having fun. We're playing.
Yeah, we're just
And ching, ching. I'm all like, oh, I want bracelets. But there's something about that, because what you do is you own a presence about yourself. And so I love that. We were kind of joking the fact that we were going to take this down a little bit and share our love for boxing, because I will always stand in a space with someone who gets and understands the reason why we love it so much. But I love the fact that we're able to draw such really powerful metaphors around what boxing opens up. And it's interesting because so many people, and what the other thing I think it is because we have a culture that creates assumptions around everything, that what you see is not everything that's involved in. So a lot of times all you see when you see boxing is the guys beating each other out in a ring because it's a competition and there's a different game. But hell, that happens in every athletic sport these days anymore. Anyway, what you don't see is the work, the discipline, the focus, the training, the composure, the stepping into your uncomfortable. I'll tell you what, taking the first time, and there's times that when you're like, well, I don't really want to fight back. You learn when you get like the time your guard's not in the right space, or you get clocked in the chin and you're like, well, then hell, I'm in it. And there's something that changes for you when you, because there is something to be said when that first punch comes at you to say, what would I do? There's so much empowerment in being able to test that for yourself so that you don't have to do it the moment when you need it, but you can do it in a space to get yourself equipped. I just think that's so, I wish more people would be open to experiencing it.
Yeah, I agree. And I had that same experience too, where, you know, like, I'm like, oh, but then like the first time I got popped,
no, right here, this one hurts.
Yeah. And it's great to learn how to channel that, because what happens is like all of that adrenaline comes up. And as you know, like, you know, we've probably talked about like amygdala hijack, you know, where like your adrenaline comes up and your fear comes up. And it only takes 30 milliseconds to get your like lizard brain going. And it takes 250 milliseconds for your frontal lobe, your brain to get going. So like, your fear and how you react to your fear is always going to come up before your brain can react and like modulate it. And to do exercises like that is going to help you in any situation, you know, where you feel fearful, and your first response is going to be like to just swing. But what you need to do in those situations is take a beat and really think about like, is that swing going to be effective? Because when you get in the ring and you swing ineffectively, now you're out of alignment. And now if I swing like this and leave myself open, I'm going to get clocked. So even though I'm afraid, and believe me, when I'm sparring, I'm afraid.
Well, yes.
But how to work with that, how to work with fear. Yeah. And
it's a great way to dance with fear and learn that, because it is a dance. And that's one of the things I think really good boxers don't take a lot of swings. If you really watch the old tapes of Ali, you watch even Layla. Layla, I love Layla Ali, man. She is my hero all the way till the cows come home. But you watch a good fighter, a smart fighter, and a successful fighter very rarely throws actually a significantly less amount of punches. It's exactly what Dr. Winn's talking about. It's that space of really saying, I'm going to be strategic. I'm going to make sure that I'm using my energy in the right space. I'm going to do what I need to do to cover, protect, and position myself. But there's so much, because it comes from a space of confidence and assurance in that. But your best fighters don't throw the most punches.
No, they don't. And the best leaders aren't the biggest barkers, and they're not necessarily the biggest talkers in the room, but they're thoughtful, and their presence, the way that they stand and the way that they're assessing things, and they look at things and they can lead, as you know, you can lead from the front of the room, you can lead from the side of the room, you know, you can lead from anywhere in the room, as long as you are, you know, secure in yourself and where you're coming from. But you need to put it out there too. You know, no one's, you know, you learn that when you get in the ring, like, you know, at first, like my trainer let me get away with that one time, just to like drop my hands and say that I'm not going to engage. And then after that, he was like, you know, because that's not life. Life is not going to just
wait for you to catch up.
Drop your hands and say like, oh, I'm done, you know.
Life's going to sucker punch you.
You know, you better, you know, sit up and at least put your hands up and be ready. And at the very least, like, bob and weave so you don't get clocked in the jaw.
Yeah.
You know,
you'll love this. One of my favorite clips I share my 3-day events is the Buster Douglas one where he knocks Mike Tyson out. And it's like, I think it's Machitsu or whatever his name is that puts the thing together. And he's like, nobody can believe it. Buster Douglas knocked Mike Tyson out. He thought he had that kid up against the corner. Life's going to have you in the corner, right? You're going to have to back up. And I love it because it's so metaphorically true. Life doesn't wait while you got your guard down to say, oh, let you catch your breath.
Oh, that's all right. Oh.
Right? And so you ask yourself, because it's all about knowing your why, which is why I show the video. But it's got to be, like, first of all, it just gets me juiced when I watch it. But it has to be one of the best metaphors, is that moment where, because there's so many things that happen in that, right? But it's that space around, and it's the moment where he says, life's going to have you up against the ropes. What are you going to do? You're going to stand in there, drop the guard, and just take all the hits. Or you're going to show up, fight back, connect to what matters to you, and say, if I'm going to go out, at least I'm going to go out swinging.
At least I'm going to go out swinging.
Right? And I'd rather go out. I mean, you're going to, seriously, I want at least one.
Right? Yeah.
Right. And I want to be in the fight. Because so many people are afraid. They're watching their life from the sidelines. And it's like, let's say, coach, well, when you're ready, please put me in. No, I'm raising my hand going, look,
I'm in.
Now's the time. It's my match. It's my time. It's time to be in the ring. And it's one of the reasons we talk about the powerhouses coming into the ring to do a few rounds, because we're going to pull it back, and we're going to talk about where life is hitting us in the mouth right now. Ooh. Right? And saying, okay, so what are the swings we're going to take back as leaders? Where's the focus? Where's the drive? Where's the space that we get to be purposeful in that? And I just never would have thought, I love this, that you and I would have had this conversation.
Right? And that's so cool that you just it's like free flowing.
Boxing and leadership is so connected.
You know, but I came from like burning out, quitting the profession that I loved, wanting to go to bed and just put the covers over my head and not come out because of shame, guilt, I mean, when you're a high achiever and you don't, you have this dream for yourself and like, I'm going to do this forever, and that doesn't work out for you, that sucks.
Yeah.
And to come back from that takes a lot of strength and fortitude. It also takes crazy, though. Sometimes you can't always fight your way out of it. Sometimes you do need to like step back, assess, and take care of yourself. But my point is too that when you're in that fight, so both of us have come back from like being on the ropes, right? And we came back, right? And you learn and you get better, you get stronger, you go back to the drawing board, you retrain, you relearn. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is like, okay, so you get knocked out. Say you get knocked on your ass. So what? All the best fighters, most of them have lost. If they haven't lost a match, they've lost rounds in the match. Right. You're not going to win, quote unquote, every round every time. You're not going to win
because if you are in the every right time. Fighting the fight, right? Because if you are winning every round, you're not challenging yourself bigger, and you're not playing in the right matches. So you're playing in a lightweight when you should be playing in probably a middleweight, right?
Yep.
You need to change your game if you're not getting knocked down sometimes.
Yeah. And so, I think we have a misunderstanding of what being a winner is. Right. Sometimes we have a misunderstanding of what being successful is. And that being a winner doesn't mean that you didn't get knocked on your ass a few times.
Right. And amen to that, right? Right. I got a lot of padding back there. It's good. But I got to say, you are definitely without a doubt a winner in my circle. And I am so, every time I spend time with you, I learn more about you. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. One of these days when we see each other, we're going to have to pull out the pink wraps and the gloves and just do a little sparring, right?
Just a little sparring.
But Dr. Diane, I want to know, how can people, I mean, some people are like, I can't believe these two just went there.
I know, it's
awesome.
like,
I love it.
How did they talk about
boxing? How can they reach out, especially those doctors that need your assistance, that are feeling that burnout, that are feeling like they're up against the rope right now? Where's the space for them to reach out for you?
Well, I would love to talk to any and all doctors who are thinking that they're burned out. Know a colleague that's burned out. I can, if any way I can serve as my mission in life now. And I can be reached at the Physician Vitality Institute, which is www.physicianvitalityinstitute.com. And if they want to just hear more about, some of the conversations that I've had on the Doctor's Life podcast while you're going to work, you want to see what's going on there, www.thedoctorslifepodcast.com. I try and make it simple.
And we'll have all that in the show notes for you, so
beautiful.
You get all that information, access to that. And our time has come to an end, and I want to go more rounds.
I know.
I'm energized right now. I'm like, man, I think I might have to go train tonight. I'm feeling really like I need to get some swings in. But as we close things out, and I know we went a totally different direction than we thought we were going to go.
I love it. I love
keeping it just open and real. Is there anything else you'd like to say to to leave with our audience, to have them consider, or one last bit of like insight from your brilliance and your perspective?
Oh, thanks. I think the main thing is that, we've been talking a lot about like fighting and doing hard things, and doctors in particular, and we're all used to doing things that are hard, and that's important. But again, when, boxers they only go 3 minutes, and then they take a break and they get some water and they reset. And that's the same thing for us. Like, in order to come out as a powerhouse, you need to take care of yourself. Period.
I love it. And what a perfect analogy to close things out. She's right. 3 minutes, take a break. It's 3 minute, 30-second active rest, right? And so I want you to think about how you're going to go full out when it's your time to do the round, when you're in the ring,
right,
and know how to say yes to yourself in that active rest and allow yourself the space to rest and recharge. And it's just with deep gratitude and just a lot of fun. And
a lot of fun.
And I want to thank Dr. Diane for joining us. You are just, I love you more and more every time I get to spend
right back at you, girl.
And so just know I am sending you heart-to-heart hugs. I am sending all of you listening huge heart-to-heart hugs as you get to decide and choose to be a leader who shows up and serves and takes that personal responsibility so that you can be playing your best game every time. And with that, we will catch up with you next time. We've got more amazing conversations and crazy things that are going to happen in the ring. So join us on the next episode of The Powerhouse. For now, just know that we love you, and we'll catch you on the next time.
Love